The marijuana business is booming in states where it's legal, but the biggest hurdle entrepreneurs still face is access to financial services. And our next guest is trying to change that. Up next, meet the man who wants to become the go-to banker in the marijuana world.
I can't believe that's still a problem. Some have called cannabis the fastest growing industry in the United States.
Our next guest is getting ready to capitalize on that growth, starting a financial services firm just for marijuana. Joining us now is David Dinenberg. He's the founder and CEO of Kind Financial. So David, how did you go from becoming a real estate developer in Philly to becoming a entrepreneur that aims to provide financing for the marijuana business?
Yeah, sounds funny, doesn't it? There was a huge opportunity to provide the industry a much needed service that any industry in America, or quite frankly the world, deserves and needs. The legal marijuana industry is the fastest growing industry in America. It's doing north of $3 billion a year, providing hundreds of millions of dollars of taxes. It's made in the United States, but yet the access to the typical lending institutions and banking institutions are few and far between.
The question I have is, if it's that fast growing, how can it grow that fast if it doesn't have access to that, the financing?
It's a great question, Bill. I mean, it's growing out of. We have 24 states today.
It's a lot of cash, I guess.
It's a lot of cash. It's 100% cash. We have 24 states today. When I first started getting involved in the market in 2012, when I started doing my research for this, it was $1 billion market. So in 3 years, it's tripled in value. It's only going up, and things need to change, quite frankly.
So what are you doing? Are you providing credit?
I'm providing the first full-service financial platform for the industry. What does that mean? I get that question asked to me all the time. We're going to provide debt and equity to the industry. We're going to provide insurance to the businesses. Liability insurance is a big topic today. We're going to provide a true and transparent payment system for the industry because traditional credit cards are not allowed to be used in this industry. And what I'm really focusing on right now is building the most superior team in financial services. My team now includes ex-FinCEN regulators, ex-IRS enforcement agents. And what we're really doing is we're going into banks and showing them the roadmap of how the cannabis industry and a bank can actually work together and accomplish the goal that's much needed in this industry.
Anybody?
Yeah, David, I was Mike Santoli here. I'm just wondering, it seems like this is kind of an interim phase, perhaps, when regulations might get loosened up and more traditional players could get in there on the financing side. Is that the case? And do you get the sense that the industry is itching for that? Is that going to happen?
I mean, Mike, this is how I look at it today. Really, what we see state-chartered banks getting ready to enter the market. We see credit unions getting ready to enter the market. But as far as, the big banks that we're all familiar with, quite frankly, the term I like to use now is they're too big to comply. The compliance burden on the large banks is going to be a problem for the foreseeable future, whether the federal regulators change the laws or do not change the laws. Banks, big banks as we know it, they use all automation for their compliance and AML, whereas the smaller banks actually use people. And this is something that we are creating an access for the smaller banks to really get a great read on who they're doing business with, being their clients and dispensaries and growers.
Evan?
I think it's the kind of thing, my guess is, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Dinenberg, but this is the kind of thing you hope to do for a few years and then sell the company to, to a bigger bank that finally decides they want to get in. I mean, it's hard to imagine if the industry gets big enough where the money amounts are big enough, then big financial players will get involved. Right now, they kind of view it more as a hassle.
And as a risk. David, is that your long-term plan? And have you actually launched the service yet?
Those are all great questions, and this is how I look at it today. Legal marijuana is one of the only industries I can quite frankly think of where the product is not only made in America, it's made in the actual state. It's creating jobs and it's creating tax revenue. So at some point, this will be taken seriously at the government, at the national level, and the larger banks are going to have to look at it. But to answer Mike's question directly, Mike, I don't have a long-term plan right now. This is a very complicated field that I'm getting involved with. And how many times in your lifetime do you get to launch a company, provide a much needed service, do good for the industry, make an industry incredible, and obviously, yes, Michael, the opportunity to make money. Am I going to sell the company in 5 years? I mean, God, I don't know that answer. I hope I'm around in 5 years, quite frankly. But this is an opportunity today that we can provide, which I personally believe my company is going to help provide the financial blueprint for the growers, for the consumers, for the dispensary owners, for the edible companies, to have a roadmap to a bank. And in the big picture, I believe we're going to help legalization take place.
All right. Well, we wish you well, David. Thanks. David Dinenberg, founder and CEO of Kind Financial. You know, it's interesting, even in the areas where it's legal, there's still that stigma that seems to be attached. Why can't you use a credit card to buy this stuff?
Yeah, the federal government is still withholding its right to come down and say you're a criminal organization for dealing with these guys. And as long as that threat's out there, they're not going to go.
State versus federal, right?
It is.
Ohio could be the next state. It's on the ballot for recreational and medicinal.